everyone, my name is Andrew and welcome back to another ranking on my channel. Today, I'm going to be delving through the legendary Black Sabbath and ranking all their albums from worst through to best. Now, I love Black Sabbath. They would definitely have to be probably my second favourite band behind they're absolutely my second favourite band behind Iron Maiden. And I've been loving their music for about 4 years now. So I thought it'd be a fantastic time to finally do a proper definitive ranking on the channel. I do also want to quickly say that I will absolutely be including Heaven and Hell's The Devil You Know. You know, it's in every shape and form, it's a Black Sabbath album, just bar the name. That obviously means that there'll be 20 albums in this ranking, and this was really hard to do. I mean, you know, Black Sabbath, even with its weaker albums, are still pretty damn good. So, yeah. Let's just get stuck in. Okay, so personally, I find this album a little bit tough slipping it into the ranking because it had zero intention of being a Black Sabbath album until I think it was Warner Brothers, the label, said to slap the Black Sabbath name on it because it'll sell better or something. So really, it's more of a Tony Iommi solo album than Black Sabbath. With that aside, and though it is in the final position on this ranking, it's not a bad album. You know, it really isn't. I mean, it's only really the final few tracks and No Stranger to Love that I'm just not really a fan of. They just bore me out. But, you know, songs like In for the Kill, Danger Zone, and Seventh Star, they're really, really good. Glenn Hughes, of course, does the vocals on the album, and, you know, I think he does a pretty damn good job, if you ask me. Alright, I can hear you at home screaming and saying, Andy, what the hell, how is this the second worst Black Sabbath album? I'm telling you right now, alright, I've just never been a big fan of the album. You know, similar to Seventh Star, I feel like it's just the final few tracks, like everything after Shockwave on this album for me is just average. I'm just not a massive fan of it. With all that said though, you know, I do really like 4 of the first 5 songs on the album. I mean, Never Say Die, Johnny Blade and Junior's Eyes. Junior's Eyes is one of my favourite Sabbath songs ever. And Shockwave as well. They're all fantastic songs. And, you know, all in all, yeah, I feel like being the last album with the original lineup, I find it a little bit sad personally because it just doesn't hit me, this album. Might hit you, doesn't hit me, but so... Anyway, moving on. The final Black Sabbath album finds its way in at number 18. This album has got Rick Rubin's grimy hands all over it. I feel like he really restricted the guys in Sabbath from being a bit more out there and dynamic with the music that they can produce, especially at this point in their careers when they've been doing it for years on end. You know, in the end, it just felt to me, you know, it's got a couple good songs, but it just felt like a pretty crappy recreation of songs from their first couple albums, and I don't really have much more to say. Okay, so this is kind of the point in the ranking where I'm like, yeah, I like these albums. I feel like this album's a bit underrated. It's got some really decent tracks all throughout, I have to say. I'm not a massive rock and roll Doctor fan, and I think She's Gone's a pretty shite track, but all the rest are quite consistently okay tracks, with the legendary Dirty Women finishing at the end. So, you know, yeah, it's a step down from their first 6 albums, but I still find it a pretty decent album to listen to. Okay, we visit the Tony Martin era for the first time in the ranking, of course now with Forbidden. This album got a makeover, a complete makeover a couple of months ago, and you know, the remix Tony Iommi did was absolutely fantastic. You know, it's so much more powerful than it used to be, and that is completely accentuated with a song like Can't Get Close Enough. With this remix, the album has hopped up a couple of spots since, you know, I first really heard the album a few years ago, and originally it was just hard to enjoy a lot of the tracks with the real shitty mix. So, you know, yeah, the album's still got a few flaws overall, but, you know, if I'm being completely honest with you, it's a lot better than it used to be. And I really have enjoyed the album. I've probably listened to it about maybe 3 or 4 times since it's been remixed, because it feels like a brand new album. And yeah, it's not too bad. Speaking of a remix, this is an album that absolutely needs one and would benefit so much from it. Born Again, of course, the only album with Ian Gillan on the vocals, is quite similar to Forbidden in a way that if this gets a remix, I'd say this would probably be a top 10 album, because there are some good tracks on this album, but could you just imagine tracks like Disturbing the Priest and Zero the Hero with clean instruments? Like, it would sound great. But those 2 songs aside, there are some great songs all throughout this album, and I'm going to be completely 100% honest with you and say that I love the album cover. I don't care what you say, I love the album cover. I need it on a t-shirt. The Tony Martin era kicks off with this album that I've always thoroughly enjoyed. This album, for me, is just full of really just fun classic songs like The Shining, Nightmare, Eternal Idol, Lost Forever, Ancient Warrior. Bloody hell, it could keep going on forever. It's a great album. It's a whole load of fun, and, you know, for me, there's just no tracks to ever skip over. Okay, now don't get narky with me. I feel like there might be some people out there who'll be even more pissed that this one is down at number 13, but hear me out. Being at 13 in the ranking just really shows how good Black Sabbath has been over their history. The band's still trying to find their sound in this album, you know, but I still really, I love this album. I'm not saying anything poor about this album because it's great. It's an absolute jam. Black Sabbath, The Wizard, NIB, Warning, you know, fun times, man. Fun times. I love this album. I just like the albums later on in the ranking just a bit more. Don't get angry with me, please. Tear is an album that has greatly jumped up the ranking ever since I was re-listening to the whole discography of Black Sabbath recently, and I generally find it really hard to find a weak spot on this album. You know, well, I have to say Feels Good to Me is probably the weakest one on the album, but still then, it's still a pretty good song. This album's got songs like Anno Mundi, Sabbath Stones, Odin's Court / Valhalla, Jerusalem, The Lawmaker, Heaven in Black, goodness me. It's bloody good songs on this album. Very, very, very underrated. Maybe the most underrated Sabbath album, I might even say. Speaking of another underrated one, I was really tossing up whether to put this one above or below Tear, but I feel like it's just a smidge better. Maybe that's because of Geezer Butler. I mean, he just makes such a big impact in Black Sabbath. This is, of course, the 4th album with Tony Martin, and I really can't fault his work that he did in Sabbath. He's just got such a great voice. Cross Purposes features maybe my favourite 1-2 punch to open up an album with Eyewitness and Cross of Thorns. They're 2 of the best Black Sabbath songs in my... Well, I say best, there's a whole list of amazing Iron Maiden songs, but it's right up there in some of my favourites. And look, you know, a heap of other tracks in there that are great too, and I really do like this album. We revisit the Aussie era with this superb album, if I may say so. Hole in the Sky, Symptom of the Universe, Megalomania, The Writ. Do I really need to say more? Oh, yeah, and Thrill of It All. That's another good one too. Okay, we get an album now that isn't even titled Black Sabbath. That's, of course, because of Aussie being, I think, like the official singer of Black Sabbath or something, and therefore the album, though it has the same lineup as Mob Rules and Dehumanizer, had to have the Heaven and Hell tag attached to it. This album is all killer, mate. There's no filler in sight on this on this one. If this was Black Sabbath's last album, I would have been well and truly satisfied. It's a lot better than 13. From start to finish, the album's awesome. It kicks ass, man. Kicks ass. And Dio, I mean, he sounds great at his age. Absolutely amazing. We visit another Ronnie James Dio album now. This one was located slap bang in the middle of the Tony Martin albums, and all in all, I feel like this one's very underrated in the Black Sabbath community. I feel like this is maybe even the most technical album that the boys in Sabbath ever did. And on top of that, it's got a really dark and heavy feel about it. I mean, that's everything you love about Black Sabbath. Songs like Computer God, Master of Insanity, and I, amongst plenty of others on the album, are just really, really good tracks. It's a really underrated album. Now, I know a lot of folks will probably have this one in their top 5, maybe even their top 3, maybe even their top 2 or 1. But in my opinion, it's just a bit lower than that. Don't get me wrong though, I really do love this album. I mean, it features some of the best riffs in Black Sabbath history. Tony Iommi just goes insane on this album. I mean, the gates of hell open up with riffs from Cornucopia and Under the Sun. It's ridiculous. This is from the early 70s, man. This is unbelievable. I think it's a pretty clear consensus amongst the Sabbath fan base that Headless Cross is the best album from the Tony Martin era, and maybe even out of all of the albums without Oz or Dio. Everything about this album is just superb. The songwriting is through the roof. The atmosphere of this album is just unbelievable too. It can be dark and heavy, but they can also be almost kind of, what's the word, whimsical kind of, that's probably not the right word to use, but the dynamics in songs like Kill in the Spirit World, Nightwing, and all throughout the album are fantastic. Headless Cross and When Death Calls would probably both have to be top 10 Black Sabbath songs in my opinion. I love those songs and I love this album. If you haven't delved into the Tony Martin era because you just haven't felt like it because it's Tony Martin, listen to this album. It'll convince you to listen to the other Tony Martin albums because Headless Cross is unbelievable. Dio and the fellas produce an unbelievable follow-up to Heaven and Hell with this album. For a while, I actually ranked this one a fair bit higher, it was top 3, but on re-listen, I re-listened to the whole discography when the Tony Martin remasters came out, and the album did fall down a few spots, but I mean, I still love it a lot. Sign of the Southern Cross, Mob Rules, Falling Off the Edge of the World, and Over and Over. For me, it's just all-time Black Sabbath songs. This album very deservedly finds its way in the top 5. So I'm just going to say right now, if Fluff was half the length, and Who Are You was cut from the album, this may possibly be the best Black Sabbath album. I just feel like those two songs just weigh it down a bit, and it's just a little bit irritating. This album's got songs like Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, National Acrobat, Killing Yourself to Live, Sabracadabra, Spiral Architect. My God, they're all-time Black Sabbath songs. The band's just firing on all cylinders on this one. It's an absolutely fantastic album and comes in at number 4. First album with Ronnie James Dio is, I think, safe to say the best out of his 4. Very, very deservedly finds its way in at number 3 in my ranking. Walk Away and Wishing Well, they're the two weaker ones. They just kind of put it down just a little bit. But even then, they're still pretty decent tracks. All the other songs surrounding those two are absolutely amazing. My top 3 from the album would probably have to be Children of the Sea, Neon Nights, and the title track. Yeah, this album is fantastic. Okay, time now to get into the top 2. Alrighty, at number 2, I've got Master of Reality. There's only really 6 full, proper songs on the album, but they all kick ass. Sweet Leaf, After Forever, Children of the Grave, Lord of This World, Into the Void, they're unreal. Unreal songs. This is 1971, man. It's ridiculous. It's one of the best albums of all time. Of course, I did say 6, I only mentioned 5 earlier. Solitude is, I think, the dark horse of this album. I mean, it's a bit of a bizarre song, but it's quite haunting in my opinion. Really, really, really underrated. I really like Solitude. Yeah, I can't say anything other than giving this album 10 out of 10. It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Well, maybe 9.99, because number 1, I'd have to say, is, I think, a full-on 10 out of 10. All I gotta say is, it's a legendary album for a reason. From start to finish, I'd probably have to say it's probably Sabbath's most complete album with the original lineup, in that there's no filler tracks such as FX, Orchid, Fluff, Don't Start Too Late, Super Tsar, and Breakout, which are pretty pointless tracks and just weigh the albums down. This is an album full of classic after classic. War Pigs, Paranoid, Iron Man, Fairies Wear Boots are probably the real, they're the more popular ones, but then you've got other songs like Electric Funeral, Hand of Doom, Planet Caravan, and Rat Salad, which is a brilliant instrumental. There's just no weak tracks on this album. Not only is it Black Sabbath's best album in my opinion, but it probably has to be one of the best sophomore albums of all time. You have Ride the Lightning and Sad Wings of Destiny amongst plenty of others, but for me, I think it's got to be Paranoid. Okay folks, so that was my ranking. Hopefully that didn't go for too long. I think I'll be cutting down a little bit of fat in the editing room, but as I said at the start of the ranking, this was quite tough to do. But when I look back at it, I feel like the ranking's quite fitting to my view on Black Sabbath's material overall. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What are your favourite albums? What are your lesser favourite albums? Is my ranking absolutely shite? Is it similar to yours? Let me know. But thank you very much for checking back in with my channel. I don't upload often. When I do, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I suppose I'll see you in my next video. See ya.